Hello everyone, Dr. Naveen here from UPSC Medico. Hope you're all doing good. So we are done with the 2020 session of UPSC mains exam, prelims and also the optional part. Hope all the medical science aspirants did well in 2020 session. And this video is to analyze that UPSC medical science optional 2020 paper. So what I'm trying to focus here is I'm trying to answer three things. One thing, I just want to make sure that though medical science, the syllabus part looks vast in nature, it is actually the 10% of what we usually read for our MBBS. So it's not vast as it looks. So I want to break that myth now. Second thing is, as I already said for the last 3 years to all my students or video course subscribers, that please focus on previous year questions, because in a competitive exam like UPSC, you need to be smart. You should never be reading your optional for more than 3 months in a span of 12 months. Okay, you should never allocate more than 3 months. So for that you should be very smart, and first thing that should be done is download the focus guide which we just released for medical science optional, the 2.01, in which we included the latest papers. So based on the focus guide, just focus on the previous year questions. So with this video I also want to make sure or press upon the fact that most of the questions are repeats. Okay, most of the questions are repeats from the previous set of books. And third thing is, I'll give you a strategy how to approach for the next 6 months. So I think in June you will have prelims, and maybe 2.5 months after that there will be medical science optional. Medical science optional is the last exam. So you will have an idea like how to go ahead for the next 6 months, how to approach optional along with your mains. So I will try to answer these three questions. So if you're already UPSC Medico subscriber, if you're already traveling with me for the past 1 to 1.5 years, for you this video is easy. But for fresh aspirants who are not a part of UPSC Medico, I want to stress upon the fact that please go through the workshop which we uploaded in 2019-20 year, because in that workshop I just discussed what is the syllabus, what is the ratio of repeats which we usually get, how syllabus weightages are divided, and all the general facts along with Q&A was covered in that YouTube video. Here I am only focusing on medical science optional 2020 paper analysis, and also the next part is how to approach or strategize your preparation for upcoming exam. So let's begin. So what I did is I have segregated the questions, section A, section B, paper 1 and paper 2. Along with the questions, I have just put in the previous year questions just to give you an idea that how previous year questions are asked here and what is examiner trying to do here. So to begin with, describe otic ganglion. This is from anatomy, section A. So what is, so they're asking question on otic ganglion. So what is this? It is a parasympathetic ganglion. So we covered in our notes the difference between sympathetic versus parasympathetic. So all these questions are covered. What are the general features of parasympathetic division? Why it is known as anabolic division? How sympathetic stimulation prepares a person for flight and fight reaction, and what are the differences between sympathetic and parasympathetic division, and what is the cervical part of sympathetic chain. So though we did not cover in detail the parasympathetic ganglion, this parasympathetic ganglion, the 4 parasympathetic ganglion, what we have is otic ganglion. Okay, we have submandibular, pterygopalatine ganglion, so etc. So all these 4 parasympathetic, other is celiac ganglion. Okay, so these 4 ganglion are very important because they come under the syllabus part, that is ANS. Central and peripheral autonomic nervous system is there in the syllabus of anatomy. So it's an indirect repeat, let's say, from the topic given. So it's not a bouncer. But again, it's always a trend in the latest exams that anatomy, they're more focusing on clinical aspects or clinical approach or clinical anatomy point. If you read otic ganglion, it is followed by the Fraze syndrome. Similarly, maybe in the next year you may expect one from sympathetic chain, that is the cervical ganglion, superior cervical, middle cervical and inferior cervical gland. Inferior and first thoracic together they form a cervicothoracic ganglion. Okay, and damage to the cervicothoracic ganglion leads to one of the important syndrome called Horner syndrome. So you might expect this in 2021. So the question will be like describe cervicothoracic ganglion. The other name for cervicothoracic ganglion is stellate ganglion. So what is the stellate ganglion, its location, its roots, its branches, and what is its role in Horner syndrome? So this is how actually whenever examiner is setting a paper for the next year, he'll be looking into the previous year questions, and he'll try to replicate or reflect a question in an indirect manner similar to this. So please, for the next year, always look into this part, the 2015 sympathetic chain part, and also what is stellate ganglion and what is Horner syndrome. Okay, so I'm not discussing each and every point in this here, because I'm making a separate video lectures for 2020 paper. So you will be getting videos. If you are already a part of our video course, you will get all the videos amounting to 25 hours plus, I think. I don't know exactly, because I'm in the process of recording them. And you will also get notes for this. Okay, notes PDF. If you are not part of a video course, please subscribe to a video course so that you can get this directly. But those people who are already been a part of video course, and now if their video course is expired, you can either renew it or you can either purchase it separately. So I'll be sharing link in the description below. Okay, now with the help of, this is from physiology. The question is from physiology, and the question is, with the help of a schematic diagram, describe the process of excitation contraction coupling in skeletal muscle. So this comes under the subtopic muscle contraction, which is given in the syllabus in physiology. See, again they're trying to link it to clinically. So in the, even though paper 1 questions are framed, they're just adding a touch of clinics to it. So what is rigor mortis? So if you understand muscle contraction in detail, you can easily say loss of ATP leads to rigor mortis and all. So it's a I'll call it as an integrated or a hybrid question, and of late there are 3 or 4 questions which are asked in an integrated manner. For example, here we are trying to integrate anatomy plus forensic medicine. So this is vertical integration, that is first year to second year integration. Horizontal integration is within first year, anatomy to physiology, physiology to biochemistry. This is vertical integration, anatomy plus forensic are mixed together in the paper 1. So though it is from section A, yes, this year in the section A, actually there should be only anatomy, physiology, biochemistry questions, right? But they try to include some forensic questions, even general medicine questions into it. So it's not haphazard again, because at the end of the day you will be writing this exam on the same day, so you will be prepared with all the concepts together, right? So it won't be a problem for you. But again, if they want to follow the protocol, section A should only include these questions. But integration is everywhere, even for PG entrance examinations also nowadays. Integration is the norm, integrative learning is the norm. Okay, so here the previous year question was asked in 2011. So what are the contractile proteins in skeletal muscle? By understanding that, what is the electronic microscopic appearance of muscle, and write sequence of events in muscular contraction. If you understand what is happening here, you will know what is excitation contraction coupling, how neuromuscular junction neurotransmitter is again went into the skeletal muscular contraction. We did discuss this in our notes and video course very clearly, like there is a flow chart available. Okay, if you are a part of video course, just go through the physiology notes, you will find beautiful schematic diagram. See, again your take home should be, when you answer these kind of questions, look at the weightage. So 10 marks means probably they will be giving 7 marks to this flow chart what you're drawing, and 3 marks to the concept of rigor mortis. This is how they divide usually. So now with the help of schematic diagram, you have to describe also. So in that way, schematic diagram is flowchart here. Okay, don't try to draw the muscle, the actin and myosin, or the sarcomere structure. All those are, it's not possible, but try to draw a flow chart here. Okay, so in the videos I'll be discussing how to approach this answer in detail, but here focus on this keyword diagram. So there should be a flow chart and diagram with this, and also clinical touch is there to this answer. And this is again an indirect repeat or a direct repeat from 2011, because you have to know the sequence of events which happen in muscular contraction. Now question number 3 is from biochemistry. So this biochemistry question, like, it's a gold standard one. The one topic which you should must read from biochemistry is the approach to a patient with jaundice, which was very, very nicely discussed in our biochemistry video. So what is this? Previously they used to ask questions directly. In 2011, define jaundice. how bilirubin is formed, what is the difference between three types of jaundice, that is pre-hepatic, hepatic and post-hepatic jaundice. Similarly, so this is question about obstructive jaundice. Similarly, what happens in pre-hepatic, hepatic and post-hepatic. And in 2019, see, there were so many questions before this 2020 exam from students asking that, sir, UPSC medical science, they will never ask repeats in the recent past. So there is no repeats, always fresh and new questions. No. There is almost, I think 10 questions are directly from 2019 in 2020. So you'll be amused to see, and you'll be surprised to see if you follow this video. This questions is from 2019. When I say repeat, see, questions are never repeated. Repeats are indirect. That means this is the norm which we follow at UPSC Medico and also Med Campus. What we have, topics are repeated, okay, not questions. So when I stress upon previous year questions, I'm not asking you to read only those previous year questions. Focus on those topics. They'll be going +2 standard deviations and -2 standard deviations from the topic within the normal distribution curve only. Okay, common things are asked in an uncommon way. Rare things are never asked. Okay, don't worry. This is actually dictum in medicine. When you see a case of weight loss, though it is not TB, patient will respond to ATT. Why? Because in India TB is common. So there might be n number of differential diagnoses for weight loss, but if you don't think of TB, if you don't treat for TB, if you don't investigate for TB, you're not a good doctor. So always a doctor should always look for common things first, and even during that preparation they have to be thorough with the common topics. And I think jaundice is like bread and butter for a doctor. And see here, and again there was one more myth nowadays coming up, that, sir, medical science is so much clinical, because I don't want to be a clinician, I want to be an administrator, I want to get into administration, so I don't need all this clinical knowledge, so I don't want to choose this medical science option. No. Though the questions look clinical, again, if you understand the essence of the question, the essence of the question is again factual. For example, when we discussed jaundice in our biochemistry sessions, I didn't start with biochemistry part of jaundice. I started with approach to a patient with jaundice from Harrison. Why? Because if you can make out whether it's an obstructive jaundice, whether it's an hepatic jaundice, okay, or it's an hemolytic or prehepatic jaundice, based on the laboratory pattern, you can approach this question happily. See, indirect bilirubin fraction is only raised very high in hemolytic jaundice because of the destruction of the RBC, whereas direct bilirubin is highly raised in case of obstructive jaundice along with raised ALP in very high levels. But when you have both levels raised, it is a clear-cut picture of hepatic jaundice. Hepatic jaundice commonly is caused in India because of the viral hepatitis. That too viral hepatitis A, right? Viral hepatitis A is the major reason. And when you look at the question now, if you don't analyze or if you don't know how to approach this question based on the laboratory findings, I think you can even read a question here. See, a 15-year-old boy supported by saying this from city slum, so some waterborne disease, presented with complaints of low-grade fever, vomiting and yellowish discoloration of eyes. Jaundice is there, fever, vomiting. It's a clear-cut case of hepatitis A. So in hepatitis A, what kind of picture you see? You will see hepatic jaundice. So what is they asking? Write the most likely jaundice and justify it with your findings. In hepatic jaundice, you have raised direct and indirect bilirubin, and alanine and aspartate transaminase levels are raised. They are very high, but severity of the disease doesn't depend upon the levels of rise. So you have to, this is again, you don't need to learn all this stuff, but at least you have to learn how to diagnose this case and classify jaundice on the basis of etiology. In our notes, it was clearly given the difference between hepatic, prehepatic and post-hepatic jaundice with laboratory findings. Please go through it and see how many times this question, 2011, 14, 17, tabulate the changes. And also very recently in 2019, they asked this question. Please go through previous year questions, and this question is along with the video is covered very well in our video course and also in the notes. Okay, so we covered 3 questions here. Let me summarize what I'm trying to do. Paper 1 section is anatomy, physiology and biochemistry. These questions are either direct or indirect repeats from the previous year topics. Not even a single question is out of the syllabus. There are toppers in the last year or previous year. I have seen their interviews saying that medical science questions might come from out of the boundary. You might expect, no. If you analyze it thoroughly, you have to thank these paper setters. The question might look out of the boundary or bounds, but it is actually, they are bound to the syllabus guidelines. Not even a single question is out of the syllabus or out of the box. Okay, but just to make it interesting, they are framing questions so that to confuse you or to lower your confidence. But please be confident, nothing comes out of the syllabus. Each question is either a direct or an indirect repeat of what we just covered in the previous year questions, and they're trying to input clinical touch to even paper 1 section A. Okay, even anatomy, physiology, biochemistry, they're inputting clinical touch. See, role of Reye syndrome, rigor mortis, and also clinical scenario. So now I just went into details of 1A, 1B, 1C. Now I'll just quickly, based on these whatever myths which we just proved that disproved them, right? So now let's go very fast with all the questions to try to understand what they're trying to do. Again, see, developmental causes of primum, septum primum and septum secundum types of ASD. Congenital heart diseases from embryology part of anatomy, very important. See, in 1994, 99, 2004, 2010, 2016, they are revolving around the anatomy and embryology of the atrial septum. If you understand how septum is formed, any malformation or any defect in the formation of these septums will lead to these developmental defects. When these kind of questions comes in the exam, try to start your answer, but at least 2 to 3 marks they'll give it for how atrial septum is developed. Atrial septum is developed, and in the end try to give a conclusion that any defective formation of the atrial septum will lead to atrial septal defect. If you conclude in such a way, you won't be losing all 5 marks together. With whatever background knowledge you have, you can at least get 2 to 3. So you're above par, because question number 1 is a must. Question number 1 is must in exam. So in question number 1, try to spend more time and make sure that you come up with some interesting facts so that the examiner will give you at least half marks or 60% of the marks instead of you getting 0 or you getting bogged down. Okay, so there are like almost 5 indirect questions from this topic. See, next question number 1D. There are 2 parts here. Name the structure that constitute placental membrane. We clearly discussed it in our placenta discussion of anatomy. List the changes taking place in placental membrane at the later stages of pregnancy, which makes it more efficient. This is again, this is asked for 3 marks and this is asked for 2 marks. So what are the structures? Syncytial trophoblast, cytotrophoblast, okay, deciduum, etc. There are similar questions in 2000. Describe the structure and function of placenta, formation of placenta, functions, so morphological features of full term placenta. So if you know this, you can happily answer the changes which happen here. Congenital malformations of placenta. What is fetoplacental unit or placental membrane? What are the functions? Developmental stages, functions, anomalies. See, from embryology, like as I said, from biochemistry, the dictum question is jaundice. From embryology, most of the times, the examiner is fond of asking you the questions from placenta. So please be thorough with the placental part. So next question is again from anatomy. They're asking about inguinal hernia, direct or indirect. If you are just passed out student from final year and post intern, like inguinal hernia is like always a gold standard topic. What are the coverings? What is the course? How a patient presents with it. See, clinical features again. They're trying to add a touch of clinics to each and every question. Okay, each and every question they're trying to add a touch of clinics to it. And anatomical safety mechanism of inguinal canal. So same questions in 1995 they asked about anatomy and applied significance. So if you know this, you can answer these questions. And what is the formation of inguinal canal? What are inguinal hernias in 2000 they asked, and what are the boundaries and anatomy of different types, direct or indirect. So they're asking, please be specific. So questions are a bit specific these years, like last 5 to 6 years. They're not asking vague questions. They're asking in points 1, 2, 3, and they're giving exact weightage to each question, minimal weightage, so that you will be coming up with hard facts and also the keywords which are essential for any answer. Okay, so here again there is a touch of clinics to anatomy, and again mammary gland was asked in 2006 and 19. Okay, they went again like clinical touch to it, like describe the anatomy of mammary gland, extent vertical, horizontal, what is the blood supply, and instead of asking lymphatic surgery, see, when you think about mammary gland, as an important topic for surgeons, what is most important thing? They do sentinel lymph node biopsy to check for lymph node metastasis, because the single most predictor of the mortality, the prognosis in a case of breast cancer is lymph node metastasis. So you have to know the lymph node, that is what is the lymphatic drainage or lymphatic supply of the mammary gland, very important thing. So blood supply, nerve supply, lymphatic drainage, and from the lymphatic drainage how it is getting metastasized to the abdomen and cranium because of the lymphatic supply, and also cranium through axillary lymph nodes, and also abdomen through the internal thoracic lymph nodes, it is metastasizing. And similarly, what is the load of sentinel lymph node biopsy? They will be injecting some dye into the loci of the breast, and we'll see where it is getting drained, and the first drained lymph node is taken out, it is biopsied to see from the metastasis if there is metastasis, because it is very important to identify the lymph node metastasis in a case of breast cancer, as I already told you. So this is again question from anatomy, and they give 20 marks to it. Okay, so I think each this will carry 5 marks, blood supply will carry 5 marks, which we covered in the exam, and lymphatic drainage is given 10 marks, but a touch of clinics to it. Again, give an account of the factors that affect the formation and maturation of erythrocytes. It's like hematopoiesis. Very recently in 2018 they asked about monophyletic theory of hematopoiesis, which factors help in formation and maturation of erythrocytes. Similarly, what are the different sites of formation, what changes happen with the RBC, and which factor will be helping in these changes, and what are the factors, again in 2013 they asked, required for normal erythropoiesis, why polycythemia occurs at high altitude, a touch of clinics to it. So these hematopoiesis and erythropoiesis is covered in hematology part of physiology. Okay, and describe the hormonal, next question 2B2, describe the hormonal regulation of the development of breast and lactation. Okay, this lactation part, see this question is again, I think this is a hybrid question again. Milk ejection reflex, breastfeeding part, etc. They also come in OBG and peds of what I say, social OBG and social peds, because and also in physiology the endocrinology part. Okay, endocrinology part, physiology of pregnancy part. So hormonal regulation of how breast is developed and how lactation occurs, and they're asking labeled diagram of milk ejection reflex, which is nicely given in OPGI, and we indirectly replicated in our notes too. Okay, lactational reflex or milk ejection reflex. So what are the repeats which we get? In 2010 they asked about steps in lactation. Okay, and 2012 they asked about role of different hormones in lactation. Okay, and what is sucking reflex through a diagram? Say 2017, instead of asking diagram of milk ejection reflex, show the sucking reflex, negative and positive feedback mechanisms of the estrogen, how they act. So except the development of breast part, rest is a repeat. Okay, rest is a repeat. Again, breast is again supported by estrogen and progesterone. Okay, estrogen helps in lobular and ductal development, progesterone helps in the stromal development, okay, the stromal growth, and both are important for breast engorgement, which occurs during pregnancy. Okay, and again, when it's a diagram, if they ask diagram, you have to draw it 100%, but even if they don't ask diagram, try to draw the diagrams, okay, are images, and when it comes to pathology, try to put H and E, use H and E. See, in the question paper instructions itself, they mentioned you can use color pencils for images or diagrams, color pencils. So when they're asking you or when they're giving you an instruction that use color pencil, examiner will be impressed if you use color pencils in the exam. Okay, so these are the repeats. So it's again, I think we not even a single question is either a direct or not a direct or an indirect repeat so far. And see, 2016 the same question is now replicated in 2020. Principle and steps involved in RFLP, restriction fragment length polymorphism, and what are 3 applications. They asked clinical applications in 2016. Now they're asking what are the 3 applications here. And vitamins and minerals, please from biochemistry part, each and every vitamin you have to read from both biochemistry and also the PSM aspects. You need to know the RDA. Just very recently in groups I shared a note on the changes in RDA, because in 2020 ICMR, Indian Council of Medical Research, and National Institute of Nutrition, they both jointly came together and they have released the required dietary allowances for all the important vitamins and minerals. Please go through the chart, it is there in the MedCampus notes part. Okay, so you have to know the RDA of each and every vitamin, because again, even in the interview parts also they might ask you these questions, like what are the resources of vitamin B3, what are the sources, sources of vitamin B3, what is the RDA? So these kind of questions might come. And what is its role in biochemical process? What is the main deficiency manifestations? And they're asking the line of management, how you manage. Again, I don't think management aspect is important from biochemistry perspective, but if there is pellagra, okay, niacin deficiency causes pellagra, which is caused by D3, diarrhea, dementia, and dermatitis kind of stuff. And how do you manage this pellagra is also, so management is simple. You have to supplement it, you have to write the dosages and all, which we'll be discussing in the videos and notes which is released along with the discussion part. Now, this is, though it's not a repeat, but each and every vitamin is asked. Most commonly asked vitamin so far is vitamin D, followed by vitamin C. And very recently there is a surge in questions from vitamin B12. It's a mix of both PSM, and even in 2020 also they asked a question on vitamin B12, but in the PSM part. And so nutrition is there in the syllabus of PSM, vitamins and minerals is there in the syllabus of biochemistry. So when they want to club together, what they're trying to do is management aspects are covered in preventive and social medicine, whereas biochemical role is covered in biochemistry, and they're clubbing it together. So I call it as, again, this concepts of vertical integration. So nutrition is there in the syllabus of PSM. Vitamins and minerals is there in the syllabus of biochemistry. From biochemistry, you will be reading biochemical role. What does it do? What kind of enzymes it activates? What is its what we say coenzyme for its work? So, and sources, RDA, deficiency manifestations, and management are a part of preventive and social medicine. Okay, because vitamin deficiencies are preventable diseases. You will be learning it in community medicine, right? And all the vitamins, all the minerals, very important, and they are very clearly in the tabular form covered in our notes and video course. Okay, just go through them, you will understand. So write pellagra here, what are the biochemical process, and see the weightage. Again, it's only asked for 5 marks, so don't try to make it an essay. Always in the exam, look at the weightage of the question for how many marks they're asking. Based on that, try to put in keywords and try to highlight the keywords. Okay. And off late, when it comes to the images, as I told you, in this question they asked about labeled diagram, right? So don't forget to label this. I have seen mock diagrams like this. They're just drawing diagrams and just leaving it. You have to name the figure. So figure 1. Try, let's say you're going to draw 100 images in your whole paper. Try to name figure 1 and name it as lactational reflex, like kind of lactational reflex or something. And in a similar way, labeling, even if you're drawing a table, label it as table 1, difference between pre-hepatic, hepatic, and post-hepatic. Then draw the table. Then it is easy for examiner to look at what you're trying to represent in the exam. So give title to a table or a figure. If there is an image, label it. And also when you read a standard textbook, they'll be writing some parts to understand, like stars, like ticks A, B. Try to describe that. So that is very important. Okay, that is very important when you are answering these kind of questions. And try to always write it in a point-wise manner, or tabular form, or a flowchart. Then only think of writing it in a paragraph way. Because if you write it in a paragraph, it's like examiner feels very bored to correct these papers. Okay, represent it in tables or flowcharts or diagrams. Then only come for the description in a paragraph format. Now, with the help of a neatly labeled diagram, see again diagrams. So please practice diagrams. So how you practice it? You have to join test series. When you join test series, you will be practicing a hell lot of questions. Okay, we have 8 subject-wise tests, 2 grand tests and 2 live grand. Each paper you will be drawing like 15 to 20 images. So that way practice makes you perfect. So what is corticospinal tract? Okay, the same question was asked in origin, course, and functions of corticospinal tracts, and what happens if there is any damage, that is upper motor neuron paralysis. So we have clearly given a table in our notes, difference between UMN palsy and also LMN palsy. UMN palsy and LMN palsy. Please go through this table in the notes. Okay, and also I have given you an image of corticospinal tract, the descending pathways of the physiology syllabus. It is very important. Both corticospinal tracts and extrapyramidal tracts and also the dorsal column pathway, that is the sensory system, are very important. Now, so question number 3A2 from physiology again. So physiology syllabus part, we have how the mechanism for control of tone, posture, and equilibrium. So the cerebellum and basal ganglion. These topics have been like from the physiology aspect. I'm not talking about anatomy. From physiology aspects have been like the topic of interest. In the recent past, they also asked about what happens in alcoholics, the balance disturbances. Okay, this was asked. Question was asked, and what happens with cerebellar dysfunction? What happens with basal ganglia damage? And now they're asking directly about the Parkinson's disease. So what kind of a disease? It's an extrapyramidal disease. Parkinson's disease comes from descending pathway, and the control of tone, posture and equilibrium is lost here. Okay, patient will have different manifestations, that is stooped posture, atonia will be there, mask like face will be there. There will be rest tremors or Parkinsonian tremors in these cases. So all these are because of the disorder of the tone, posture and equilibrium. So this question was like an indirect repeat from 2019. So 2020 they asked about directly the clinical. They went into clinical. What is Parkinson's disease? Okay, when you treat it, what kind of physiological basis does it carry? So clinical touch to section A, paper 1 is seen here. Define BP and describe the neuroendocrine regulation of BP with the help of flow charts, schematic labeled diagrams. See what they're trying to do. So for the next future aspirants, when you read any question or when you look into our notes, try to practice the diagram which is given. Very important. And what is BP? What are the various factors which affect BP? How BP is controlled? What is baroreflex mechanism? See, 2011 they asked, 2017, and we covered it very well along with hypertension topic in physiology. And regulation of BP, if you understand that, you know antihypertensive medication is a part of syllabus in pharmacology, and you also know medicine, management of hypertension, plus in surgery, management of surgical hypertension. They are all interlinked together. So you might expect vertically integrated questions in this aspect. Okay, and in the same 2020 paper, in paper 2, section B, I think, section B, they asked question about pheochromocytoma, surgical hypertension. Okay, so this is again a repeat, BP, and every alternate year, starting from last 10 years, I think, 1, 2, 3. So they start with shoulder joint, they go to knee joint, then they go to hip joint. So this cycle gets repeated. So as I told you, from biochemistry you expect jaundice, right? Okay, very important one. Similarly, not anatomy, there is always a dictum question, that is shoulder joint, and all these aspects are very clearly covered in our joints discussion of anatomy, and painful arc syndrome is also covered, frozen shoulder is covered. So try to look into these. 5 marks is a bit tricky one. It's fine if you are an anatomy student, if you are fond of anatomy, you will be learning a hell lot of information about the gross anatomy, the relations part, the images and all. But when it comes to clinical, you will be underestimating that. So this is orthopedic question actually, but again clinical anatomy question. When you look at the syllabus of anatomy, most of the topics which I mentioned, they say clinical aspects or applied anatomy. These are the headings they gave in the syllabus itself. So indirectly that asking you to focus on the clinical ramifications of the topics which you read for your anatomy. That is trend everywhere. You take USMLE exam, you take NEET PG, you take UPSC CMS exam, you take INSET exam, and you also take UPSC medical science optional. This touch is very important. Even if you don't know that, you can happily write it for 10 marks, and you can just mention what is painful arc syndrome, at what angle you will be having this painful arc syndrome, and how to treat it and all are clearly mentioned in our notes and videos. See, 2012, 2013, 2017, they asked the same question from shoulder joint. Again, as I told you, vitamin D is always a topic of interest for examiner, most commonly asked vitamin. Similarly, vitamin D resistant rectites. What are the vitamins and state deficiency or diseases caused by vitamin D? Why vitamin D is a hormone? What is its synthesis mechanism and physiological function? All these are previous year repeats. Now here what they are asking, synthesis and functions and deficiency disorder, and what kind of investigations you do and how will you manage this case. It's again a vertically integrated question from the nutrition aspect of PSM plus vitamins, minerals aspect of biochemistry. Please try to learn together. Both the aspects are covered in our notes. Okay, yes. Illustrate, and one more thing, calcium is also important. Calcium metabolism from endocrine physiology. calcium metabolism has an indirect relation with vitamin D, because vitamin D and calcium are like, vitamin D is a hormone and it regulates calcium metabolism along with parathyroid hormone and calcitonin. So many times the calcium metabolism question is also asked. Maybe in the next year you might expect calcium metabolism question from 2021. Just focus on. So we are coming to the end. We are dealing now question number 4. Illustrate the structure of tRNA. See, 2018 they asked that same question. What is the tRNA? What are the energetics of peptide bond and what are the inhibitors of? Similarly, this question is both from protein synthesis, its role, and structure of DNA. Both the images are available within our notes. How tRNA is involved in protein synthesis, how it carries an amino acids and transfers it is there in the image, and what is the structure of tRNA. The clover leaf shaped structure of tRNA is also clearly given. Now this is I won't call it as a bouncer again, but again, conduction system. Transmission of the impulse is there in the physiology syllabus, transmission of impulse, but all this they're only asking about neuromuscular junction transmission. They never asked about how action potential is carried. So conduction system of the heart, please look into it. What is AV nodal delay, and add a note on WPW syndrome, that is accessory pathway. If there is no AV nodal delay, atria and ventricles will be contracting at the same time. So to make sure that atria contracts and empties blood into the ventricles, we have AV nodal delay or refractoriness of the AV node. If that is gone, maybe because of if impulse starts in the atria SA node, it goes to the AV node and from there to the bundle of His. This is how it is transmitted, right? If there is an accessory pathway called bundle of Kent, instead of AV nodal delay, the atria and ventricles will be contracting at the same time, and this is called as Wolff-Parkinson-White syndrome or bundle of Kent. It's as simple as session, but these are basics you can write. How action potential is transferred in the conduction system of the heart, why there is AV nodal delay, and what is bundle of Kent, and what is Wolff-Parkinson-White syndrome. Next, question number 4B2, asked for 10 marks. They're asking you to discuss the synthesis, release, regulation, and function. What are the hormones of posterior pituitary gland? They're not actually synthesized in the posterior pituitary. They're transmitted from hypothalamus into the posterior pituitary. Okay, so these are oxytocin and also vasopressin. So in pituitary, there are so many questions like name the hormones, but from anterior pituitary, most of the questions are from GH, growth hormone, but from the posterior pituitary, so many questions are asked. To start with, vasopressin is an antidiuretic hormone, right? So they're asking how drinking large amounts of plain water leads to increase in, because of ADH. Name the hormones of posterior pituitary. Again, what will happen to deficiency of them? What is the role of ADH in maintaining plasma osmolarity? Enumerate the hormones of posterior pituitary gland. Enumerate the various hormones reported. They're almost there. Even in 2019, see, as I told you, there are 10 to 12 questions, like almost 20 to 25% of the paper is from 2019. Okay, directly see, enumerate various hormones secreted by the pituitary gland with their cell types. What is 4C1? Erb's palsy. Beautiful video is there with us, because brachial plexus injury is very important one. So these days I am getting 3 to 4 students ask me, sir, in anatomy, in upper limb, when we went through your videos, you are only discussing the nerve supply of upper limb, but when it goes to lower limb, you are only discussing the blood supply of lower limb. Simple question, blood supply of lower limb. See, when you look at the syllabus, man, they're only asking about the blood and nerve supply of upper limb and lower limb, the blood and nerve supply of upper limb and lower limb, including the clinical anatomy. Now you see, when I talk about upper limb, nerve supply or blood supply, if I want to be smart and if I want to choose only one, which one will I be choosing? Arterial or venous injuries to the upper limb are very rare, but nerve injuries are very common. Peripheral nerve injury, injury to the radial nerve, injury to the ulnar nerve, carpal tunnel syndrome, see, radial nerve injury, ulnar nerve injury. They're only asking about the nerve injuries because that is more common clinically. When you go to the lower limb, except sciatica, which is covered in the videos, sciatic nerve injury, the rest of the injuries to the lower limb are again vascular. That means, see, varicose veins, loss of competency of the valves. Arterial supply, if it gets damaged, you will see fracture of the neck of the femur. Avascular necrosis of the neck of the femur is common in adolescents, aged patients. So this is again vascular supply or blood supply is more important for lower limb, whereas nerve supply is more important for upper limb. If you're not smart, you can't just start with bones. Femur, it has facets, anterior, posterior relations. All this is a waste of time. You're not here to become an anatomist, or you're not here to become a clinician. You just need to pass this exam with flying colors, maybe 315 to 315 between that, and get into administration and rule this country. Don't try to be over smart by reading everything from BD Chaurasia from page 1 to page 10. You have to be smart to pick what topics to read, and it is clearly evident if you observe the previous year questions. They're only asking you ulnar now, carpal tunnel syndrome, radial now, ulnar now, and what we did in our video course, we covered carpal tunnel syndrome, we covered ulnar nerve injury, wrist drop, radial nerve injury, everything we covered, brachial plexus injuries. So not only Erb's palsy, maybe next year you might expect Klumpke's palsy. This is also covered in our video course. Okay, please go through them. Next, describe the embryological basis of horseshoe kidney. Development of kidney, very important. In 2010 and 2003, they asked about how kidney is developed and what are the anomalies associated with. Okay, what is horseshoe kidney? They're asking a specific question, but embryology of kidney is very important, and developmental anomalies associated with kidney are very important. Okay, so let's stop this video here because it's been, I think, 40 minutes only. We were able to cover paper 1 section A. So what is your take homes? Repeats. Focus on our free focus guide, and don't doubt your preparation. Don't doubt your confidence. Okay, don't go away from medical sciences, because what I say is that soul of doctor in you will never die even if you become an administrator, and this is not such hard stuff to crack. As you can see, it's very easy. If you read few topics, there are direct repeats from that. So that is what we did in our video course. We tried to confine the whole of the syllabus into 120 to 130 hours, so that 130 hours, man, daily if you do 2 hours also, you can happily finish it in 2.5 to 3 months. So 3 months is an ideal time to finish off your preparation. Okay, 3 months to an optional, 9 months to your mains, and you're a doctor. Even if there is a bouncer, you can at least write 50% of the questions, and here UPSC Medico is there to guide you, so it's not an issue. So I'm closing it off here. So I'll be also uploading paper 1 section B, paper 2 section A, and paper 2 section B separately.